welcome to Tech and Sports Podcast, a show about how technology is revolutionizing all the major sports as well as health and fitness. You can find this episode from your podcast service of choice. We are your third stringers. I'm your host, Paulo Donnelly Bleddo, editor of Tech and Sports. You can find great Tech and Sports content on our website, itbusiness.ca/sports. With me here today, as part of the third stringers, is the big Radu, Alex Radu, who is trying to select his favorite team in the NFL.
R-A-M-S, Rams.
Can you spell L-A-S-T? Place?
Burn.
Okay.
Los Angeles is the best city in the world.
All right, then. Carlton kid Mandy Kovacs is here, and she's breathing a big sigh of relief knowing that Josh Donaldson has not been traded by the Blue Jays on trade deadline day.
Would have been the biggest mistake of the organization.
I couldn't agree with you more. Okay, we have a Power Pack lineup for you today, starting with robots. Alex has a story about that with the Olympics. Mandy, you have a story about Major League Baseball and virtual reality. And I'm going to give you my favorite big data stats from the recently concluded Tour de France. We have incredibly hard trivia, and our debate section will be on robot umpires in baseball. So sit back, don't panic, because the third stringers are coming into the game. Okay, Alex, the Olympics are less than a year away, I believe, and I believe robots are infiltrating the games. Will they be replacing the NHL players who are not showing up in Pyeongchang, South Korea?
Well, I would watch that. For sure. Basically, what's happening that in Seoul, in the capital of South Korea, in the largest airport that is there, I'm going to butcher this name, the Incheon International Airport.
Pretty good. I think that's right.
Maybe. Someone can tell us. So basically, what's happening is LG has these robots, and they are now inside of this airport. So there's two robots, the guiding robot and then the cleaning robot. And they're basically Roombas on steroids. So,
awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. And they kind of have like the look of, you remember the movie WALL-E?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's like WALL-E, except like, remember like the female robot? Was it a female robot?
Yeah, Evie.
Evie. they basically look like that. So I don't know maybe if LG like, is this copyright? I don't know. That was a bad joke. Anyways, so...
that movie didn't have a great premise for humanity there.
No, it did not.
No.
But, so maybe this is the beginning of that. We don't know. Because the robots kind of look like it.
Okay.
But anyways, so the first robot is this guiding robot, which understands 4 different languages: Korean, English, Chinese, and Japanese, which are the 4 most heard languages at the international airport. And basically what it does, it connects to the airport's central server to provide information regarding boarding time, locations of various restaurants, shops, etc., how to get through. And what's even more interesting is that the guiding robot can scan your boarding pass and then take you through the airport, straight to your gate. The speed of this robot is yet to be determined, so if you are running late, it might only be going at a walking pace. So it might not be the best solution in that.
And it doesn't run alongside you?
But yeah, but if you're lost, you don't really know where you're going, you have, some time, totally can just go to a robot that can take you there. And then the cleaning robot is basically just like I said, Roomba on steroids. It just goes around cleaning things.
Like the Roomba does.
Yeah. Like as the Roomba does. And it can memorize certain areas that are dirtier and then go to them more often. So it's really just automating kind of the cleaning process to make sure that the airport stays clean at all times. And I'm sure it's, just seeing one going around, it's about waist high and looks like a mini battle tank.
That's cool.
So it'll be interesting for everyone to go around. But yeah, so right now it's LG's, they have its test phase going on right now. Although they have been in the airport for the past few months already, just kind of every now and then testing it. But right now they're hoping that it's going to be like, a mainstream thing come the Olympics this winter.
So I gather, Alex, that this technology is being used to basically onboard all these athletes coming in at, basically at one time during the airport. Because I know in Canada, we sent around 400 to the Summer Olympics, and I think the U.S. Hovers over 500. I'm sure the contingencies for the Winter Olympics are a lot less than summer. So is that the plan from LG?
Yeah, so the plan is to just help the airport with traffic in general. It doesn't they're not necessarily targeting the athletes, but the athletes and then the millions of fans, from other countries all around the world who are also going to be coming in.
Right, they're obviously going to have a congestion problem because of the event.
And so this is going to help fix that problem.
Okay.
Well, on that note, though, how many robots are there? Because, I'm sure one or two can't service that many people, right?
Yeah, so it's not just they haven't given a number, but I imagine as many are necessary. What's interesting, an interesting stat is 57 million people on average go through that airport. Wow. So I think they have that mind, and then they're going to that number in mind, and then they're going to maybe expand on it a little bit when considering the Olympics, and then discern how many robots they need in that case as well.
Okay, so we're going to have an interesting debate section on robots in sports later on. But Mandy, you have an interesting story about Google VR services for Major League Baseball.
Yeah, so I came across a pretty cool partnership between the Major League Baseball and Google. They've teamed up to launch an original virtual reality video series. It's called On the Verge, and it basically lets fans get up close and personal with some of the league's best players. So far, they've put out 4 videos, and each one highlights a rising young star. So we've got Boston Red Sox outfielder Mookie Betts. We have the Pittsburgh Pirates first baseman Josh Bell, Minnesota Twins pitcher Jose Berrios, and San Diego Padres outfielder Manuel Margot. All of whom, I would like to point out, are under the age of 25. So, basically, millennials are taking over right now.
Okay.
But yeah, so you can watch these videos using Google's Daydream View headsets, but you can also use those cheap cardboard headsets that you can get anywhere essentially.
And I guess it could lead to a branding opportunity for the clubs to put their logos on these.
Exactly. Yeah. And you can also see the videos in 2D on the MLB YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. And so that's where I got a chance to watch them because I don't have a VR headset right now. And even in 2D, these are really cool. You can toggle around and you can listen to the players chat about their lives and their journey towards the MLB in various places across the stadium. So you can be out on the field with them, you can be behind the cage during batting practice, or even in the clubhouse or dugout. So it's quite fascinating, although I will admit that it is pretty laggy on YouTube.
So Google has been really trying to widen the scope of its partnership. Is this the only thing it's worked with on for MLB?
No, so they've actually collaborated in a mobile virtual reality video game as well that's based on the Home Run Derby. So players of the game can take part in the slugfest, and they can choose between 8 of the world's top ballparks to play in. So you can choose Fenway, Wrigley Field, or even Miami's Marlins Park, because in honor of it hosting the most recent All-Star game just a few weeks ago.
What I think is really interesting with this kind of idea is really getting into the lives of the athletes.
Exactly.
You see, remember with the Winter Classic in the NHL, they would have the HBO, was it 24/7 or something like that show that really gets into their lives and stuff. And those are always big hits with fans of any sport. They want to go behind the curtain and see what these athletes are doing. So I think this is also a cool way to do that, right? Yeah,
the San Diego outfielder, Manuel Margot, is actually Spanish, so his whole video is in Spanish. And he talks about what it's like to come from that area of the world and try to make it in the world's biggest league for baseball. And it's quite fascinating, and they give you subtitles as well to read, so it's not too difficult to understand if you don't speak Spanish.
One of the coolest things I've ever done was take batting practice at Fenway Park in Boston.
Cool.
And I think this obviously gives that a person who doesn't have, the access that we would have to do that in a virtual reality way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, great. So we're going to be talking more baseball in our debate section coming up. But my story is on the biggest data takeaways from the recently concluded Tour de France. So I want to ask you guys, were you all shocked that Chris Froome defended his yellow jersey?
Absolutely not.
Not at all.
No, that's his
Especially
fourth
after
title.
that Peter Sagan injury that happened early on.
Yeah, but you know what? This Tour de France has been really interesting just in terms of all the data points that has come out of it. So we've already reported that, Dimension Data, a CDN top 100 solution provider, has been providing all the technology for this year's race. And they capture the data using GPS tracking devices underneath the saddles of each bike. And they track speed, position within the peloton, and distances. Dimension Data is also built 21 digital workplaces utilizing one big data truck and a mobile client experience center. They have a data house, 5 hospitality cars, 13 regional command centers. They've collaborated with other technology vendors such as Cisco and Microsoft and Slack as well. So this was a full court press, to use a basketball analogy, for capturing the data at this year's race. And here are some of the most interesting stats that came out of all this effort. So over the course of the 3,540 kilometer race, the average speed was, does anybody want to take a guess?
140.
You're off. 41 kilometers per hour.
I was going to guess 30.
I was really off.
Okay.
I was thinking cars for a second.
So what was the, there's 21 stages in the Tour de France. Which was the slowest stage?
One of the mountain stages.
Yeah.
Obviously, stage 17 at 35.7 kilometers per hour was the fastest one.
Wow. I don't know.
The
final?
The Latin, maybe one of the flat stages.
Yes, it would be the first one.
First one, yeah.
Yes, 52.3 kilometers per hour. So Dimension Data processed about 3 billion data points, producing 147 gigabits of data to tracking all these results, along with telemetry data and weather data. Possibly, though, the most astonishing insight from all this data is that the tech team at Dimension Data were able to predict some of the top finishers in each stage, and they had a success rate of 71.4% accuracy. And I think that's what we've been talking about with tech and sports all along, is can this data help you win? Can it predict what can possibly happen? And I think Dimension Data is obviously doing that. Okay, another interesting data point. Mandy, you mentioned who won the mountain stages. That is the person who gets to wear the polka dot jersey and is the king of the Alps. And that was Warren Barguil of Team Sunweb. And so it was the hardest stage. So who do you think what stage was the hardest stage?
Well, you would assume it was the slowest.
But it wasn't.
Interesting.
It was stage 9, because the elevation there was 4,600 meters. And 13 riders had to give up. They couldn't even complete it.
So is that one is it harder, but then it's faster, because I guess if they're so high up whenever they're going down at some point, they're speeding up, so the average, I guess.
Yeah, and the data also found out that the gradients of each climb changed from last year. And so that was kind of some of the more fun aspects of the data that was captured at the Tour de France. So what's the most exciting part of any cycling race? The breakaway, right?
Yeah. Also the last 10 seconds.
The last 10 seconds? So one of the things that the Dimension Data was able to determine was, if you're making a breakaway, will you be successful? And they found out that you're probably not going to be successful if you make that breakaway, because only one of the breakaway riders, a fellow by the name of Geraint Thomas of Team Sky, won one of the stages from a breakaway, but out of the other 8 times they've broken away, they were not successful, and in some cases even led to crashes. So that is my big data takeaways from this year's Tour de France.
What's interesting about the breakaway thing not working is that you do hear a lot, the underlying thing of these breakaways is that they aren't necessarily, as this data proves, to be the most useful tool to win, but it does give your advertisers TV time.
So are you saying, Alex, that you'll see more breakaways because of those jerseys with the advertising on it?
Well, yeah. So each team, there's a team Dimension Data.
Yeah.
So it's for 4 hours of an event, Dimension Data, I imagine, would enjoy seeing the Dimension Data team name displayed every time they look at the camera. So
unfortunately, their top rider finished 19th place. So
well, they're not the best team.
They're not the best team, but
But that's why they break away, because then they still get the TV time.
That's right. That's right.
Despite the fact that a team like Team Sky,
right,
they're the best team.
That's right. Yeah.
So,
yeah. But maybe next year, Dimension Data might do better.
Yeah.
Okay. So before we get into our debate section, we have impossibly hard trivia. And last episode we had a fun one with boxing and wrestling. And this one is going back into the archives. So we're talking about robots and robot being umpires in Major League Baseball. So this trivia sort of leads into that. And here it is. At the 1980 Wimbledon Finals, the tournament introduced an electronic line judge. And the bad boy of tennis at the time, Eli Nastase, went down on his hands and knees to actually argue a call with the robot, saying that his ball was in and not out. And my question to you guys is, what is the name of the electronic line judge used at that time?
I have no idea, but if that happened today, that'd be the most amazing GIF.
I was going to say that the visual of that's in my head right now is absolutely hilarious, and I'm going to go look it up as soon as we're out of here.
I'm sure it's on YouTube somewhere.
Yeah, like I can picture it happening in my head.
Yeah.
But
Can you imagine Federer doing that now?
Yeah, or like imagine like Nadal just arguing with it.
I'm surprised that John McEnroe didn't just club this piece of technology when his call was out.
That is shocking.
Yeah, very shocking. But let's go on to our debate section. Mandy, you got the setup for this, so take it away.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about robotic umpires. And I mean, this is something that's pretty controversial and something that a lot of people are passionate about, whatever side they happen to be on. But over the last couple years, I feel like we've seen prominent umpires in the MLB messing up important calls, and that has a huge impact on the game. And I mean, I'm not taking away the hard job that umpires and I guess more generally referees have, but I feel like this is something that we should probably look at further now that the technology has really evolved so that we could actually implement this a little bit more cost effectively than maybe in the past. So, I mean, I'm a Blue Jays fan, no, full disclosure, and their issues with umpires have been pretty obvious. I mean, just last week we saw general manager John Gibbons, pitcher Marcus Stroman, and catcher Russell Martin all thrown out of the same game, all within the same half inning by home plate umpire Will Little. And I mean, I've watched it over and over again trying to figure out a reason for that, and I haven't really found any. It just kind of seems like a bit of a power trip move by Mr. Little. And I mean, Washington Nationals player Bryce Harper was thrown out of his game right around the same time. And I mean, he was visibly upset by it, and he's one of the greatest players in the game today. And I feel like that's unfair for a lot of fans that go to games wanting to see these players. And I mean, of course, I think all Blue Jays fans can kind of remember the issues that we had with umpire Vic Carapazza in the 2015 playoff series against the Texas Rangers, where his moving strike zone was an issue for both teams, not just the Blue Jays. So I am firmly on team robot umpire, at the very least for balls and strike calls, because I think that changes way too easily and that kind of takes away from the game. So before you guys have a chance to rebut, I have a few stats for you that kind of proves my point.
Go ahead.
So Scott Lindholm of Beyond the Box Score estimates that umpires get about 85% of calls right. So, I mean, when I first heard that, I was like, oh, that's not too bad. It's kind of a decent number. Until I found more research coming out of Northwestern University and Columbia Business School, which found that, yes, umpire bias does exist. So umpires were more likely to call a strike on a pitch that was actually a ball in favor of the home team. And contrary to what you might expect, umpires are more likely to mess up calls in important situations, like the bottom of the ninth in a tie game, rather than the first inning. And then, so there's more. Umpires are more biased against ending an at-bat. So, I mean, if the count was 3-0, they'd be more likely to call the next pitch strike so that the at-bat keeps going. And if the count is 0-2, they'd be more likely to call the next pitch a ball for very similar reasons. The race of the pitcher also appears to matter, with umpires less likely to expand their strike zone for African-American players than anyone else. And so does whether they're an all-star player or not. And I mean, so not only does the all-star status of a pitcher change the likelihood of a strike call, the color of their skin does, the stadium where the game is being played, the actual count itself. I mean, those are just a lot of factors contributing to bias, and I mean, they're really hard to ignore. And I mean, I know fans can make a case that these errors make the game more fun or exciting. But I think at a day and age where people at home have the strike count and the pitch tracker, and they can actually see where the ball is and whether the umpire got it wrong, I feel like it's time to change, and we should be following that more closely in actual games.
So, Mandy, I think you are going to make enemies of the Major League Baseball Umpires Union with all those stats there.
I'm definitely not a traditionalist.
And I think that's going to be the biggest problem. I don't see a very powerful union like the MLB Umpires Union, even getting this to first base. And also, too, there's a lot of questions about where will this robot be situated in? Because if you're only going to do balls and strikes, then how can the home plate umpire call if someone's safe at home or not?
Well, so it was actually tested out in an independent league game in 2015 and 2016 in California, and it went really well. So the first game, they actually had an umpire with an earpiece. And so there was an automated system called Pitch FX that would figure out whether it was a ball or a strike based on sensors under home plate, and then it would tell the home plate umpire, Eric Burns, and so he would announce the calls out loud, and he would do the whole fancy arm signal and hand signal and that sort of stuff to tell people actually at the game when it was. But so he was not actually calling it himself. He was using this system that was speaking to him in his ear, and so he loved it. It kind of transformed his views, and now he's an analyst on MLB.com or MLB TV, and he's a really big proponent of it now. And I think a system like that could work. So you wouldn't necessarily be putting umpires out of a job. They just wouldn't be doing much.
So the sensors are on the plate.
Yes.
But strikes are also called from letters to knees. And that is determined by the height of the player. So how is that worked out with the sensors?
I mean, it can sense how far above the home plate it was. Okay. And so I guess it has a strike zone ingrained within itself, and that's how it makes the judgment calls.
Okay.
I think it could be something like the MLB has the stats of how tall each player is and what that zone is on average for that player. And then that data just gets inputted into that system, and then they can create like this strike box from there. Because I feel like it wouldn't take too many games or too many at-bats even to really determine the average distance that they are standing.
Right, so it would probably be pre-programmed into the system that this is the starting lineup and these are the strike zones for each player. And then obviously you have to make judgments just like you do on the scorecard if, a player is removed for tactical reasons or there's a pinch hitter or things like that.
I mean, the one thing that I did read is that this would take away a lot of the catcher's job because part of their position is really moving themselves so a ball may look like a strike or vice versa, right? So this would take a lot of magic out of what they do, and so I could see them definitely hating this. Yeah,
like Russell Martin's one of the best pitch framers in the game.
Right. So, I mean, it could definitely take away in that extent, but I just think that bad calls can just change a game and change a momentum really just so easily that at this point, if we have this tech, why shouldn't we use it?
So here's one of the biggest issues I have with it. And, we mentioned the trivia question as it relates to tennis. We all loved John McEnroe and his arguments with the chair umpire in tennis. And it made for great television, great spectacle there. I think, arguing calls is part of sports. Every team sport has that, whether it's hockey, baseball, football, basketball. You have these arguments with players and referees and things like that. And I think if you take away this, I'm sure you'll still get those, those two close calls at first, second, and third and home. But, as we saw, like in the situation with Stroman, Martin, and John Gibbons, that led to an amazing debate among fans of what happened. And going back to your 2015 point of view with that umpire, and that led to the epic bat flip by Jose Batista. I was in the stadium that night. No one knew what was going on, and everyone went crazy. So these memorable moments are made by the humanistic aspect of the game that the umpires have. Anyways, that's my take.
You see, that's kind of how I view it as well, but I also view it as such a situational thing. like I do agree with Mandy when it comes to the fact that we can see the pitch box on TV. So when it's clearly out and the ump makes the wrong call, we know immediately that was wrong, and it's like, well, there has to be a way of being like, you have to monitor that somehow. But then, yeah, you're right. When it comes to like tennis, for instance, even in 2017 at the French Open, like when you're watching tennis at like the U.S. Open, Wimbledon, and all that on the grass and hard court, you see if they challenge it, you see the camera of the ball going and it drops and it sees where the shadow was and all that. On the clay courts, they don't even have that technology set up because you can see where the ball lands in the clay
because it makes dust.
So like the players the player will challenge it when like they're like, that's out or that's in, like, look, it touches, and then the line person comes over and just looks at that. So it depends on the sport too. It's also basketball where it's tough for, like, how would a robot in basketball or hockey determine
in
a
hockey?
Foul?
True.
Like that's tough.
That's a judgment call.
Because that's a judgment call.
Right.
But in soccer and hockey, there's goal line technology to see if the puck is in or the ball is in. Right?
Yeah. So there is that kind of technology, but then again, these judgment calls, and it is part of the game. Like you look at arguably one of the best NBA Finals games, this Game 4 in the basketball where it was like a record-breaking offense by the Cavs, but then they also got like 26 calls called for them or whatever. Right. So everyone's just watching it and going like, what are the refs doing? What's happening? And then LeBron and Durant are yapping at each other, and everyone's like, this is one of the more outrageous and incredible games that has ever happened.
And that's what I mean. You look at tennis, right, and you don't have that. They've wiped that clean because of technology, right? No one is debating any calls anymore. There's no John McEnroe going insane. And I fear that, this will eliminate that aspect of the entertainment value of sports.
And that's actually something that John McEnroe himself has said is a way to fix tennis. Because tennis has this problem. And he's like, get rid of the chair umpire. Have it be an honor system. Because you're going to have players who are playing at Wimbledon in the finals with an honor system. And the fans are all going to watch. All that stuff's going to happen, but it's going to be an honor system between them two. And you're going to have players legitimately start to hate each other and have real rivalries because you're going to be like, you screwed me. So it's like...
I love to see that.
Right? So like that sort of thing in 2017 when like we do have the technology and all that, but taking it back to the basics, that could do some things. But then like, again, with baseball, if you didn't have any of those moments... Does that Blue Jays game that happened recently just become then just another Blue Jays game?
Exactly.
So that's the argument. Yeah, that's the argument. But then like it does make the sport better because if you're on the opposite side of it, like if you were that was against the Angels, right?
Yes, or was that Oakland?
That was the Angels.
Yeah.
Angels, yeah. So I guess if you're an Angels fan, you're like, that was great. But if you're a Blue Jays fan, you're like, oh, that's awful. But then, like, for me, like, I'm a Lakers fan. We're talking about, what, the 0-2 or 0-3 Lakers Sacramento Kings game?
Yeah.
When it was like, you can argue that game was rigged. And the refs were helping the Lakers out, trying to get that game 7.
That's right.
So, like, if you're a Kings fan, you are... totally against it, but then when I was like 8 at the time, I'm like, oh, this is fantastic.
Yeah. So, I mean, it could benefit both sides, but I mean, just if technology is evolving, I mean, why can't umpires and refs evolve? It may not take away their entire job, but it may turn them more into caretakers as opposed to policemen.
And with the technology on the horizon, it may actually improve umpires. So if they know this is coming, they better be sharper with their calls.
Exactly.
Okay, let's get to the impossibly hard trivia. Do you know the name of the technology used to do the electronic line calls at Wimbledon?
I do not, but I'm going to guess that it is a IBM and something robot.
No, it was made by a British company.
Oh man, I was gonna go with Watson too. As like an IBM type of thing. I don't know, like Hercules?
Hercules, my God, you won't believe how close you are.
Really?
Cyclops is the answer.
All right, that Greek mythology.
Exactly. You know the one eye?
That makes sense.
For the line call, get it?
Yeah, that's clever. Very clever. I'll give it to him.
All right. That's all the time we have for Tech and Sports. I'm Paul Delablato. Thank you, Alex and Mandy, and check in with us later. Thank you.